How do I start in philosophy? How can we learn philosophy? I receive this kind of questions pretty much every day. And if you teach philosophy, you probably heard that before as well. How do I start in it? What do I read to start in philosophy? But there's something that's pretty tricky here, because we live in a moment in time in which philosophy is sold as a sort of knowledge that might be acquired in order to differentiate those who know it from those who doesn't know it. Pretty close to those instruments of distinction, as Pierre Bourdieu called it. But I have to say, philosophy is not something that is learnable. One cannot teach philosophy, because there's no way you can learn philosophy. Philosophy is not a thing, an object, acquirable. And there's a very simple reason for that. Philosophy is not something like an object that you can acquire, because philosophy must be understood retrospectively as a mode of communicating and dealing with mysteries, most of which, if we use Karl Jasper's definition, related to questions concerning how things work, as well as questions concerning the end of life, a condition that or a burden that our species carry. Therefore, from within this, curiosity arises. So philosophy is not an object acquirable, it is a posture. You can definitely learn and develop a certain posture according to a specific philosophical movement. But you got to understand that philosophy is not detachable from history. Philosophy is most certainly understood retrospectively as we look back and seek into history a chain of thinkers in a certain way that follow and propose a certain pattern of thinking. So that is to say that you cannot learn philosophy. And this is a very, very widespread misconception. And we could actually divide this discussion into different paths. The first one being the locus of philosophy in the world of nowadays, which is, as I used to say, a musical box, some sort of a bourgeois trickery that you pay expensively so you can play some beautiful phrases, although absolutely detached from reality, but they sound knowledgeable. They distinguish people, and this might be acquired by means of buying books, which are pretty expensive, especially if we take under consideration the Maslow pyramid of nowadays real needs. Much more than the price of a physical book, the problem nowadays is the price of the time for reading a book, the available time for reading. But I mean de facto reading books, not just buying books and saying you read them, which is what really goes on 99% of the time. So that is to say that nowadays, as philosophy is not inherently connected to the way we live, which ultimately means that nowadays philosophy is taken as a hobby or toy, and a very expensive toy, by the way, because it consumes time. And we could say that from Enlightenment to our times, philosophy lost its place in the center stage of production of nowadays world, which aims almost exclusively in instrumental knowledge. Instead of critical knowledge, instrumental knowledge, a terminology that derives from Max Weber, that in a way guides all human knowledge towards knowing how to do something, not to ponder or critically observe why we do things that we do. We're surrounded by crowds of people who live and die only within instrumental knowledge. And this obviously comes along with the trend of specialists. We're getting more and more specialized into things in terms of a technical way of knowing how to do things. Therefore, and obviously, and this is an issue for another video, that's how we made ourselves so absolutely replaceable by the technology and machines that we ourselves created, like AI. Because we're born and raised as stupid machines, organic creatures meant to be productive, and we are not productive. Life is not productive. It's not useful. It has no reason. Life is therefore useless, as well as biology is useless. We don't have productive ends. That's what it means. And within this world of strictly technical or instrumental knowledge, instrumental meaning knowing, acquiring a specific language to deal with machines, we turn ourselves into the logic of machines, lowering our possibilities, the creative possibilities that are so inherent to biology. And this is precisely the scenario that makes philosophy nowadays something that was kicked aside from the centrality of social relationships, especially as we aim more and more into financial and economic decisions above everything else. Everything is related to or must obey to financial decisions. However, and I must stress that philosophy itself is inescapable from a human condition of looking at things, of wondering. And it is much well alive, although hidden from plain sight nowadays. Philosophy is well alive within judiciary, for instance, as well as technology or as science, all the scope of scientific knowledge that requires theories, conclusions, acquiring knowledge, aiming towards the acquisition of data, knowing how to deal with this data, the transformation of this data, different languages and different kinds of knowledge, making the proper inferences at the end, making the proper questions at the beginning. All of that is philosophy. And apart from that, obviously, we have the religious layer of living, which deals with some sort of philosophy as a tool for building specific forms of explanation about our deepest existential questions, although in a very specific manner. So there's that. Philosophy nowadays becomes a fetish, a product that must be acquired by a high price, and that serves as distinction between people who can or cannot afford this because it's a kind of time within which you spend talking about or reading books, and this is a very, very expensive kind of time. But there's a second aspect that shows that historically philosophy has been a way of life, and I'll cover that in the next video. If you like, please subscribe, give it a like, and see you in the next one.